Hello everyone, Justin Crumley here with the CuJo Productions channel. Welcome to another installment of CuJo's Corner. Now, sorry this one took a little bit of some time, but I've been a little bit busy. A lot going on in my life right now. But anyway, I'm here, and let's just start talking. So today, I want to talk about some favorite TV shows of mine. Over the years and throughout my life. These are TV shows that left somewhat of an impact on me in some way, shape, or form. Now, I'm not going to go in great detail about every show because then it would just drag and drag, and I got a lot of shows listed here. So, anyway, with all that said, let's start talking. Now, the first show I want to talk about is a show that I see actually quite a bit of people know about, which makes me very happy because I loved this show as a kid. And that's Beast Wars. Now, if you're not familiar with Beast Wars, it's basically a CGI Transformers show. And instead of Autobots and Decepticons, it's Maximals and Predacons. It's basically like after the Autobot Decepticon war, but the plot itself takes place, it's like a time warp. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail on the show, but to say that the CGI has not aged well would kind of be an understatement. But once you get past that, it's actually a pretty solid show. And I also recommend watching some of the behind the scenes stuff because it's really amazing. What the animators and the showrunners and the writers, everything, just that staff were able to do with that show. And let's be honest, the show was basically just to promote toys. That's the basic, that's Transformers in a nutshell, but yeah. But again, I highly recommend watching the show, and I also recommend looking at the, some of the behind-the-scenes stuff. I'll briefly mention some of my favorite characters. I really like Optimus Primal. Dinobot is leaps and bounds one of my favorite characters, and interesting enough, I didn't know this for a long time, but he was actually the first character inducted into something called the Transformers Character Hall of Fame. And that's freaking awesome, because I loved Dinobot as a kid, and I love Dinobot now. There is so much depth to that character. I honestly think it's impossible not to love that character. I also really like Cheetor, just because he's kind of like the young, naive one, and I like those characters. So, anyway, to wrap it up, Beast Wars is an amazing show, and I highly recommend it. Beast Machines, I also watched a little bit of. Wasn't so much a fan of that show as much as I was Beast Wars, but, it's there. Another show I watched as a kid, I don't remember too well. Actually, I remember bits and pieces of, but I haven't seen it in forever. Reboot, which I think was made by the same company that did Beast Wars, which was Mainframe. It was a Canadian company. That's really all I know. Yeah, I remember watching that as a kid. It was a decent show. But not really too much else to say about it. To be honest, I don't remember a whole lot outside of the CG and the purple cubes and like the characters playing different games, playing different characters. It was kind of an interesting show, but again, I don't remember too much of the plot or outside of what else I told you. So moving on, Dragon Ball Z. God, what can I say about this show that has not already been said? I loved this show as a kid. I still love it now. Some of the coolest moments in anime. Now, I'm not really like a diehard anime fan, but this and Cowboy Bebop, another great anime. Definitely recommend checking that out as well. Um, but Dragon Ball Z, when I was a kid, I loved it, and like I said, I still love it now. I like watching some of the clips, like when Goku goes Super Saiyan for the first time, or when he goes Super Saiyan 3. Also, just like, God, even like the Abridged series is also really funny. And, I mean, honestly, there's so many different moments I watch as well. God, I already mentioned the two Super Saiyan moments, but, the entire fight between Gohan going Super Saiyan 2 for the first time against Cell, also another just amazing moment. And the speech that Android 16 gives to him, just really good. This is a really good anime. It's a bit formulaic, but whatever. It's still awesome. I also have seen Dragon Ball, but I don't remember it like fondly or vividly like Dragon Ball Z. And Dragon Ball Super, I've never actually sat down and watched the whole thing. I've only seen like clips here and there. I've seen certain episodes here and there. I have a basic gist on what happens in the show, but I've never actually like sat down and watched it or anything like that. So, um, yeah. Anyway, Dragon Ball Z, awesome show. Can't say enough things about it. This one is incredibly nostalgic for me. These next couple are gonna be X-Men the animated series, the '90s animated series. Just awesome. Absolutely love this show. Everything about it. Now, I haven't seen it in a good long time, and I know it's on Disney Plus. I am planning on like checking it out again to see if it kind of holds up. So I guess I'll just leave it at that. But one thing I can say for sure is that opening theme song is freaking awesome. Moving on. Um, Another show I watched as a kid, and I actually binged a few years back, not too long ago. Maybe it was a little bit over about 5 years ago or so. I don't know, but within the past decade, that's Spider-Man the animated series. Now, I'll be honest with you guys. I'm a '90s kid. I was born in 1992. This is not my favorite Spider-Man series. It just isn't. Now, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying it's not my favorite. Now, there are some good things about it. There's a lot of great things about it. For one, I think the humor is pretty funny. The opening theme song is pretty cool, albeit the CG in the opening kind of a little bit, it hasn't aged well, and honestly, I don't feel like it blends too well with the animation. But yeah, it's not a bad show overall. Unfortunately, it got canceled and it ended on a ridiculous cliffhanger that we never got any answers to. I actually did a review about this show. I think, God, oh, it was a long time ago. I don't even remember when that video was uploaded, but it's when I was still like in my early days of uploading, so the video probably isn't very good, but yeah. um, Batman the Animated Series was another one I watched as a kid. Much like Dragon Ball Z, what can I say about the show that has not already been said? This is almost unanimously argued upon as the best comic book animated anything that's ever been created. And although Batman is not my favorite superhero, I can't really argue with that claim because this show is amazing. The animation is really good. The storytelling is very deep. It gave us Harley Quinn. Gave us a really deep backstory for Mr. Freeze. I don't remember. Did it actually, was it the debut of Mr. Freeze? I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that, but I know like it had something to do with like changing his backstory or something, giving it more of a darker edge. More of a darker, deeper edge, and it actually really worked because it gave so much depth to Mr. Freeze, and yeah, so not much else to say. It's a great show. Justice League Unlimited. I'm just gonna group them together. These shows are amazing. Absolutely like the pinnacle of what I would expect the Justice League to be. This is kind of, and you know, I mean, I know it's unfair to compare it to the movie, but like, I would, if anybody ever asked me, like you don't want to read the comic books, you want to see like the best iteration of the Justice League, I wouldn't tell them to watch the movie. I would probably tell them to watch this show, Justice League, and then Justice League Unlimited, because much like Batman the Animated Series, there is so much depth to this show. They put a lot of work into the characters. It's just everything. The storytelling, the animation. I think it's Bruce Timm was the animator. At the time for WB. So, yeah, just a really awesome show. Both of them. Definitely recommend checking those out. Batman Beyond was another one I really liked as a kid. Actually, my uncle and I used to watch that show together all the time when I was a little kid. Yeah, it was such an interesting premise. Like the idea of like old man Bruce and this new young teenage Batman. It was kind of like if Batman had taken inspiration from Spider-Man in a way, because it's a teenage Batman, but unlike Spider-Man, he has the original Batman, you know, in his corner. So it was a really interesting dynamic between Bruce Wayne and Terry McGinnis. But much like, and I'm not sure if Bruce Timm did this one either off the top of my head. Somebody please correct me in the comment section if I'm wrong about that. But the storytelling, the animation, everything about it, just a wonderful show. So, yep, not much else to say about that. Moving on. Gonna get back into the X-Men for a second. X-Men Evolution, which I have actually watched recently in the past few years. And to be honest, it's probably one of my favorite X-Men shows, if not my favorite X-Men show. Uh, it the animation, storytelling. I hate to sound repetitive. But just everything about the show, I thought it was really good. And the interesting dynamic here was that it made like Scott, Gene, Kurt, Kitty, and like a good number of the X-Men characters teenagers. And it also introduced Spike, who was not part of the comics before the uh, uh, before X-Men Evolution. So that's actually really cool. I like those little bits of trivia. And the adults in the show being like Wolverine, Professor X, Storm, and Beast, who comes a little bit later in the season. I'm not sure if it was season 1 or season 2, but he was like the physical education teacher, the gym teacher, and he was actually like making this formula to keep the thing under control, the beast inside under control. I worded that kind of funny, but you guys get what I mean. And yeah, essentially, it was just it was great. I loved it. I loved that they went in a different direction. Um, it really played up a lot of like the prejudice against mutants, and it just gave you such a great look into like, yeah, there are, good and bad mutants, but that doesn't mean that they're all bad. They're people just like us, and it was a great message to send, and overall just a really great show. I can't recommend enough. Wolverine and the X-Men, another show I really loved, unfortunately got canceled after one season. There was actually an X-Men anime. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? That was pretty cool. I watched it once, and yeah, it's got some cool moments. It's really bizarre, and it's definitely very different than I would expect for an X-Men series, but honestly, it wasn't too bad. I'd highly recommend checking it out. Code Lyoko. Does anybody remember that show? I watched that show when I was in middle school. My friends and I would always discuss that one. Like when like the whole Francis Hopper storyline and whatnot, and I never did watch the live action one, so I don't know anything about it, but the animation to the show, now it was I think it was from France, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure if it was from France or if it was from Italy. Don't quote me on either. I didn't really do my research or anything. I'm just going off of pure memory here. But but yeah, it was the animation was very like different looking. Like it wasn't anime, but it wasn't, I don't know, it was very different. And that's probably one of the things I really liked about it. But also like it I think it the CG scenes look pretty good for it being kind of a split between 2D animation and CG animation. Um, and yeah, like I said, my friends and I would always talk about that show when I was in middle school. We'd be in the middle of like dueling. We'd play Yu-Gi-Oh. Yeah, we'll get to that in a second. But well, maybe not a second, but a minute. But anyway, and we would talk about Code Lyoko. It was a pretty decent show. I'm not sure I would recommend checking it out. I haven't sat down and watched it in a while. So, but yeah, it's there. Sonic X. I actually just binged this not too long ago. And yeah, it's bizarre. Now, I watched the English dub, so that might explain a lot, but it's very bizarre. It's a little off the wall. Does that mean it's bad? No, but don't expect something normal. Then again, it's Sonic the Hedgehog. What's normal about it? Spider-Man, the new animated series, the MTV one, the CGI. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Actually, I'm sure a lot of people do. The show actually seems to have a cult following, which kind of warms my heart a little because I actually think it was a pretty solid show myself. It unfortunately got canceled after one season, and it was actually pretty unconventional, I would say, for a Spider-Man show. Yeah, it had some classic villains like Electro and Craven, but it also had like original villains. I think. Now I don't know if these two are from the comic books, but it had like those twins that would like manipulate what people saw or whatever. Um, and like it it was also like centered towards adults, which also just kind of adds to its unconventional kind of nature and its tone. Not nature. What the? Its unconventional tone or style, I guess you could say. It's unconventional style. That's the best word. God, I can't talk tonight, guys. I'm sorry. But anyway, it's a great show. I definitely recommend checking it out. The Spectacular Spider-Man. This probably is my favorite Spider-Man show. Absolutely perfect storytelling. Unfortunately, another one that suffered from being canceled and ending on a ridiculous cliffhanger. It's so stupid. I hate it. It drives me nuts, but definitely an awesome show. If you are a Spider-Man fan, check it out. Alright, so these next couple I'm going to just kind of glance over. Static Shock, I watched a lot as a kid. Great show. Osmosis Jones, I watched here and there. It was alright, but I don't remember too much about it, so moving on. Big O, another anime. I watched this with my uncle, too, besides like Batman Beyond and stuff, but yeah, Big O. It was pretty cool. I was a little young to understand a lot of its more like deeper storytelling elements and just the whole thing with like the opening line, Roger Smith always saying something along the lines of like, Paradigm City, the city of amnesia. It was like, what? Like as a kid I didn't quite understand that, but now I'm a little older. I've never actually gone back and binged the show or anything, but I'm sure I would understand it a lot better. But yeah, it was a cool show when I was a kid. Honestly, I really like the big giant robot monster fights. I loved Godzilla movies as a kid, so like giant monsters and kaiju and all that stuff always just amused me. And yeah, I mentioned Cowboy Bebop briefly. That was a pretty cool show. I haven't watched it in a while, but my dad actually liked that anime, and my dad's not really the biggest fan of anime, but even he liked it, so put it that way. I also really like Death Note as well. Death Note I thought was a really good anime. Maybe not perfect. Towards the end, after L dies, I feel like the story kind of unwinds a little. So yeah, I don't know. That's about it as far as what there is to say about Death Note. At least what I have to say. Naruto. I watched this when I was about 14. I wasn't like a die-hard fan of this, but my buddy Josh and I, we would always watch this together, and we followed it. It was a decent show. To tell you the truth, I haven't watched it in a while. I haven't really like mustered up the energy to even attempt to watch it. So yeah, it's just there. Now Yu-Gi-Oh! English dub. I've watched the original, GX, 5Ds, Zexal, and Arc 5. Now, I've actually done reviews of, I think I've done reviews of every show, I'm not sure, but to kind of, I honestly am not sure, but to kind of sum up my thoughts on each show, I really like the original. I think 5Ds might be my favorite at the top. Then if I had to make a list, it would be like 5Ds, the original, as unpopular as this is going to sound, GX, Zexal, and Arc 5. Now, that's not to say Arc 5 was bad. I just think it was probably my least favorite because, I don't know, I felt like, getting into some spoiler territory here, but I felt like they wasted a character like a Zuzu or a Yuzu, if you prefer. She was a really awesome character that I felt like after a while just got resorted to doing nothing but screaming Yuya. Wow. But Arc 5 had some pretty interesting twists and turns. I did like the concept of like them hopping dimensions into like the synchro dimension, the Xyz dimension, I think being like completely wiped out or something to that effect. I'm not sure. It's been a while since I've seen it, but the fusion dimension being like really evil. So that was a really interesting concept. And I'm glad they didn't really waste that, at least in my opinion. It didn't seem like they wasted it, but there were definitely little things here and there. Also, I felt like Yuya became almost completely dependent on action cards, and it just kind of got old after a while. Am I the only one that thinks that? I don't know. I don't care. So, anyway, yeah, that about wraps it up as far as like any and all animes I've ever watched. But picking up from there, Ben 10 was another show I watched as like a young teenager. I think I was about 13 when that show came on. Ben 10 Alien Force I also really liked, and even to this day I still think it's pretty cool. You know, some people don't really like the dark tone and like oh, it's too serious. It's too serious. I actually don't mind it myself. I haven't seen it in a while, so I guess I'd have to rewatch it somehow before I really give my full opinion on that. But yeah, I don't mind a darker tone myself, but I can see why it is a bit like of a clash because the original Ben 10 was definitely a lot lighter in tone, and it was kind of somewhat of like an action comedy series. It wasn't just action, so I could see why some people would have a problem with Ben 10 Alien Force being a bit darker, but it just never bothered me, is all I'm saying. Avatar: The Last Airbender. I'm actually binging this right now on Netflix. I love this show. It's probably one of my favorite shows of all time. I don't even want to really say anything else. Just go watch it. Avatar: The Legend of Korra. I don't know if that's really like the title, but that's what I'm going to call it. This one was alright. I didn't quite like this one as much as The Last Airbender, but I don't know. That's asking a lot. I think it's actually solid in its own regard. But yeah, the flaws in it are pretty obvious. I do see why. The first season, I've seen a lot of, maybe not a lot of people, but I've seen some people really just don't like the first season, and I do see why. it definitely ends. I would say, like, it's too much of a happy ending. Like, not that that's a bad thing, but it essentially, we see Korra become almost a fully realized avatar by the end of season one, because she gets her bending taken away, and she loses her fire, earth, and water. And she learns air at like just the right moment or something like that. I don't really remember off the top of my head, but and then like Spirit Aang comes back and gives her bending back, and it's, I don't know, it's kind of a little tacky, I think. Not that I would have preferred, like, oh, she should be an airbender and have to learn the elements again. No, because that's just repetitive, and no. Um, I don't know. To tell you the truth, I can't say for sure how I would have done it. I definitely wouldn't have her be like an expert bender as like a toddler, but maybe I would. I don't know. I would have to sit down and really think about it. But Legend of Korra does have some good moments. I don't want to come off like I'm just completely shitting on the series as a whole. Season 3 was, I remember really loving seasons 2 and 3, but season 3 especially, because she actually really did struggle. There was, she still had a little bit of some, like, poison in her or some kind of metal that was kind of keeping her from bending to her fullest, and there was actual struggle. It was really interesting. The show Legend of Korra, I think, it's one of those shows that starts off kind of slow, but gets better as you watch it. So it's a show that I would say if you're not big on it first, just keep watching it. It gets better. All right, so these shows are a bit adult, are definitely more adult, but I'm gonna kind of blaze through them real quick just to kind of save time. That, and honestly, there's not a whole lot I can say that hasn't been said about these shows. Maybe a few here, but anyway, South Park, Family Guy, and I'll tell you the truth, The Simpsons. I liked watching it as a kid, and occasionally I'll watch it here and there. It's not my favorite show, but some of the earlier seasons are pretty funny. Home movies. This one's kind of obscure. This was on when like Adult Swim, which is the block on Cartoon Network that runs all the adult shows, if you're unaware of that. This was one of the shows that premiered in its early, like when Adult Swim was only on Sundays. Do you guys remember that? That's going way back. I think I was like 9 when that was going on, so that was a long time ago. But Home Movies was a show I really enjoyed. Probably because like I enjoy making movies and shooting film and video editing and all that kind of stuff, and I could kind of relate to some of the characters in this show. Plus, it was just funny. It was kind of just a humble slice of life show that really just didn't take itself all that serious. The animation's a bit bland, but if I'm not mistaken, the guy actually went on to do Metalocalypse, which is also just a freaking hilarious show. Another one I recommend. Aqua Teen Hunger Force. I used to watch that when I was younger, against my mom's wishes. But it was a pretty funny show. Definitely worth checking out, in my opinion. What's interesting about that show is I think it's completely animated in Photoshop. So, yeah, that's something else, if you ask me. Mission Hill. Does anybody remember Mission Hill? I don't know. This show, I don't see too many people talking about this show. It's about a guy named Andy French. His brother Kevin moves in with him at his apartment. And basically, it's just kind of the adventures, well, maybe not adventures, but it's just these completely normal guys. Kevin, his neighbor Jim, They have another friend. I don't remember her name. I think her name's like Penny or something like that. Not to be confused with Penny from Big Bang Theory, but anyway, Mission Hill. It's a pretty funny show. Not the like most hilarious show in the world, but for a show that's kind of just a little bit of a humble slice of life show, it's definitely worth checking out in my opinion. King of the Hill. I really, really like this show. This is a funny show, I think. This show, I don't know how popular the show is. I think there's a ton of people that have talked about it, so it definitely has a pretty big fan base. So I guess I should say I do know how popular this show is. But this is just another one of those like humble slice of life shows that, you know, you see this guy, Hank Hill, who's kind of a straight man surrounded by a bunch of crazy people, and maybe not crazy in the sense of like they're insane, but like, you know, they're just, to put it in a sense, you know, they're just not right. I've always been able to mock Hank Hill to a T, you know. Dang it, Peggy, the boy ain't right. So anyway, moving on. King of the Hill's hilarious. Definitely check it out. The other Mike Judge show, Beavis and Butthead. I freaking love this show, and much like Hank Hill and King of the Hill, I can do Beavis and Butthead almost to a T. So, so just because I mentioned it, here we go. He Butthead. This guy's gonna mock us. Shut up, Beavis. I'm like trying to get mocked and stuff. Alright, we're moving on. Sorry. So taking it back to some classics for a little bit. Courage the Cowardly Dog. Really funny show, albeit kind of freaky, even for me as a kid. And I don't scare easily as far as like TV shows or movies, but yeah, this show definitely has its fair share of freaky moments for sure. Powerpuff Girls. Yeah, I watched it as a kid. I don't care. It was awesome, and I loved it. Dexter's Laboratory. Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. Another show that is pretty funny. Actually, I'd like to think that show's well known. I don't know. I haven't seen too many people talk about it, but I don't know. I haven't really searched it on YouTube or anything. So, moving on. This one I know is obscure. Sheep in the Big City. This was not really a favorite of mine. It was just kind of a show that I remember watching like before Adult Swim on Sunday night. I would always watch this because it would be the last thing on before Adult Swim would come on. And I was a kid, so I felt like a rebel. Like, oh yeah, I'm watching these adult shows, like home movies. They swear and they say damn and hell, and that's like cool, and I'm rebellious because my mom doesn't like me watching these shows, and that's awesome. So really, that's the only reason I'd watch Sheep in the Big City, but nonetheless, I remember it, so I thought I'd mention it. Okay, Codename Kids Next Door. Oh boy, this show was hilarious. I loved this show as a kid. My cousins and I, we used to actually, like, we were little kids when this show was on, so we would actually, like, pretend to be members of the Kids Next Door, and, like, we would like, fight adult tyranny and stuff, and, you know, really, we would just be in the backyard playing in the pool with, like, sticks, and we would tape, like, grapes at the end of them, and olives and stuff. My aunt would get mad at us for it, but, you know, it was all fun. And, you know, honestly, Codename Kids Next Door is just one of those shows that's really fun to watch for that reason. Just experiencing things through the eyes of a kid. It's it's wonderful. It's a good show to watch. Johnny Bravo. Honestly, don't remember like too much about it, but pretty funny show when I was a kid. Uh, Whatever happened to Robot Jones? That's an obscure one. One that I barely remember, to tell you the truth. I do remember the main character getting a different voice actor, and they like re-released the show on Cartoon Network or something in some kind of attempt to reboot the show. I don't know. Honestly, the show is incredibly obscure, but I liked its animation style. It was kind of very like sketchy looking, kind of like rough comic book ish. Very, and also kind of like colorful, like psychedelic. I don't know how else to describe it, but just and honestly, it had some pretty funny moments here and there. All right, so let's talk some more Transformers shows. The '80s Transformers show, I I actually watched as an adult. I was about 19. Watched it on the Hub Network, and to be honest, it's incredibly corny. It's like really corny, and to tell you the truth, the opening for the first season, it's so goofy. Like, I'm sorry, I don't mean to step on anyone's like Transformers toes. It's a great show. Don't get me wrong. I love the show, all three seasons, and honestly, the Transformers movie. The Transformers the movie, the '80s movie. It's really good. I like that movie. Honestly, I like it better probably than the Michael Bay movies. In fact, I would say that's a safe bet. But yeah, if I'm being honest here, the '80s Transformers show is incredibly corny. It's just it's good, but it's corny. That's all I can say about it. All right, Transformers Armada. This was a complete anime. And tell you the truth, I loved this show as a kid. I went back and rewatched it in high school, but I don't think I really liked it as much in high school. Like, it, not that it was bad or anything, but it's just like something about it was just like, yeah, this ain't as good as I remember. So anyway, with that said, moving on. Transformer. I did not watch Energon, so I'm not even gonna talk about it. I fucking hated that show. But anyway, um, Transformers, Cybertron. That show I have not watched in a good long time. Uh, I remember not really caring for the human characters at all. Of course, that was kind of the trend in Transformers Armada as well. I didn't hate the human characters in Armada. I just didn't like them. For this one, Cybertron, I didn't really. It was kind of the same. Didn't like them, but didn't really hate them. Kind of found the mini-cons a little bit annoying in Cybertron, but it is what it is. They were there. To be honest, though, the CG looks freaking terrible. Like, it just has not aged well. I'm sorry. It just hasn't. Now, again, I don't remember too much of the story, but really the story for this one for me is I'd watch this show before school at like 6 in the morning or 6:30 in the morning. There's actually one more anime I forgot to mention, unless you count Transformers Armada. But it was Bakugan Battle Brawlers. I would also watch that in the morning. Actually, me and my buddy Josh would watch that a lot as well. And then like Transformers Cybertron would come on after. So yeah. Then there's Transformers Animated, which I did binge not too long ago, and it's kind of funny because like when I was younger, I did not. When I was like 17, I didn't like it. I thought it was stupid. It didn't take itself serious enough. It was like, oh, the show sucks. Doesn't take itself serious. The animation's too silly looking. It's stupid. I don't like it. But I've gone back and watched it. And to tell you the truth, it's actually a pretty solid show. The animation, yeah, it's a little goofy. Sometimes the dubbing looks a bit off. And, you could complain about how Optimus is definitely kind of downgraded as far as like his rank. But I don't know. I still really like the show. My favorite character, probably, to tell you the truth, is Prowl. And yeah, and the series finale to the show was definitely a heartbreaker. But still, actually a really solid Transformers show and one that I recommend. Alright, I saved the best for last. This leaps and bounds is my favorite Transformers show of all time, and it's Transformers Prime. Oh boy, I cannot say enough good things about that show. So I'm not going to say anything else other than go watch it. And then watch Predacons Rising, which is basically the series finale. But only watch that movie if you watch Transformers Prime first in its entirety. Watch the show, then watch Predacons Rising. And then come back to this podcast and comment below and tell me how awesome it was. So, alright, we're going to get a little goofy here. I'm going to be honest with you guys, and actually, if any of you have been following my channel for a while now, and I'm talking like a while, like early 2010s, you probably already know this about me, but the next two shows I want to talk about are iCarly and Victorious. Now, I was a little older when iCarly came out. I don't remember how old exactly. I think I was like 15, 14-ish, maybe. I didn't start watching it, though, until I was about 16. Yeah, it was dumb. It wasn't like the funniest show in the world, but you know what? I was 16, and I really liked it. I had some fond memories of watching that show, coming home from school and watching it on Nickelodeon while I did my homework. And to tell you the truth, it wasn't that bad of a show. I mean, yeah, like I said, it was kind of stupid, but that's not a bad thing. Also, Victorious, guys, anybody that knows me knows I, of course, love this show. I did a review of it. I was a huge fan of Victoria Justice at a point, and I still am a fan of Victoria Justice to this day. I definitely am a little disappointed that her career didn't like take off, but I have seen her in other things, and I do want to see her in some of the other movies that she has done. Like, I think she did like this movie where she's like the wife of this like bodybuilder dude. I still haven't seen that. She was also in this other movie that I think is on Netflix. I also want to check that out. But yeah, like a lot of people from that show went on to do big things, like Ariana Grande, Leon Thomas. I think he actually won a Grammy. Evan Jogia, I think he's done a few things. Elizabeth Gillies is on a show on the CW right now. Matt Bennett's done a few things. Eric Lang, I think his name is. He was actually in a movie that my parents were watching on Netflix. I think it was like Waco or Waco, whatever it was called. It was like some movie that was based on some incident that happened. I don't remember when off the top of my head, but I think it was called like Waco or Waco. Again, I'm probably mispronouncing that, but a lot of the actors did go on to do things. So yeah, that was great to see. So anyway, with that said, moving on, let's kind of wrap this up here. I watched pretty much all the Pokemon anime up until Black and White. So like the first, the Indigo Plateau, then there was the Johto region, then the Hoenn, and the Sinnoh, and whatever the Black and White region was. I don't remember off the top of my head what the region was called, so I'm not even gonna try and think of it. But Yeah, I kind of just lost interest in Pokemon after Unova. That's what it's called, Unova. I think. Yeah, Unova. Sorry. I kind of just lost interest in Pokemon at that point. I don't know. Like, I still play Yu-Gi-Oh. As torquey as that sounds, but like Pokemon, just I don't know. I never kept like too much interest in it. Now that being said, I do have some favorite Pokemon, and I do have like one for sure, like Umbreon. And that's because like I played Pokemon Coliseum a lot when I had a Nintendo GameCube. So um yeah. Anyway, pretty much every Pokemon show up to Black and White. That's kind of where I stopped. That's where I lost interest. So, moving on. The Walking Dead. Now, I have admittedly not really kept up with this show. A little bit before Rick Grimes left the show, Andrew Lincoln, I should say, the actor. A little bit before he left the show, I kind of lost interest. Not that it was bad, but I just kind of, I don't know, the interest for me just kind of went down, and I stopped watching it. So, but for a pretty long period of time, I did watch it, and yeah, it was pretty cool. It was pretty good. So, anyway, moving on. Breaking Bad. I admittedly am a little ashamed to admit this, but I did not watch the show until it was over and it was on Netflix in its absolute entirety. That is when I first watched this show. This is by far one of the best shows I've ever watched. I've only seen it once, and it was a few years back, but holy crap. This show is absolutely fucking amazing. Definitely recommend checking this one out. Alright, so I'm going to kind of rapid fire this. Daredevil, the Netflix series. I've watched the first two seasons. Really enjoyed the first one. Second one wasn't quite as good, but we got the Punisher, and there were some interesting elements. Jessica Jones, the first season, that might be my favorite Marvel Netflix anything. Like the first season of Jessica Jones, I thought it was incredibly well acted. I thought it was incredibly well shot, well edited. I don't remember who played the bad guy, but he did a wonderful job. Um, God, I don't even remember who did played Jessica Jones. I know her first name's Kristen, but she did a really wonderful job. And just the first season of Jessica Jones, I cannot recommend it enough. I didn't really like the second season that much, and I tell you the truth, third season I was kind of just burnt out. I was like, I'm over this. This is done. And they kind of hinted that the Purple Man was going to be back, or Kilgrave, if you prefer. I was just kind of like, yeah, I don't really care. Luke Cage, it was alright, first season. I guess that's right around the time I was getting a little bit bored with like the Marvel Netflix stuff, but still a pretty solid show, and I definitely recommend checking it out. Punisher, first season, pretty good, pretty solid. I did watch the first season of Iron Fist, didn't really care for it, and I did watch The Defenders as well, and honestly, that one was kind of a disappointment. It was just okay. But yeah, the last show I want to talk about is Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes. This show is freaking awesome. Absolutely awesome. I think it captured the tone of the classic Avengers comic books almost to a T. Now, I haven't read a whole lot of the classic Avengers comic books, but just like the animation style, the art style, it's like a big giant tribute to Jack Kirby, which I really love. So, yeah, plus the story is jam-packed, and it really does suck that this show, much like Spectacular Spider-Man and a lot of shows I've mentioned over the course of this podcast, really is that it got canceled before it really could get a proper ending. And that just really bums me out, you know? So, yeah, definitely one of the best comic book TV shows, in my opinion, and one that is definitely worth your time. Now, before I go, there's one more show I want to talk about, actually a couple more, that I'm actually in the midst of watching. Now, I think I mentioned I'm binging Avatar: The Last Airbender. But there's a couple more shows that I didn't really want to talk about because I don't really have an opinion on them, and that's because I haven't finished them. One of them is The Mandalorian. I know I'm late on that, but I literally just got Disney Plus not too long ago, and I'm about halfway through The Mandalorian, so not quite done yet. So please, no spoilers as of right now. And I'm also Star Wars: The Clone Wars. Now, the CG one is what I'm talking about. I'll briefly mention. I really love the animated one, the 2003 Star Wars Clone Wars. But that's more of like a movie to me, not really like a TV show, even though it's really just like 15-minute segments broken up into different things. But anyway, Star Wars: The Clone Wars, the CG series from like the mid 2000s. I watched it in high school. I really enjoyed it. Now, the reason I didn't want to really talk about it is because I have not seen the seventh and final season. So, again, please no spoilers, but yeah, I am gonna get around to watching that at some point on Disney Plus, probably after I watch The Mandalorian. So, yeah. Anyway, guys, that's gonna wrap things up for this podcast, this installment of CuJo's Corner. Let me know down below, what kind of TV shows do you guys like? Have you guys watched, or have they made an impact on you in any way, shape, or form? Any kind of impact whatsoever. Actually, I guess really before I go, I'll end it on this note. I guess the reason I really want to talk about like favorite TV shows is, and really just the impact they've had on me, and why I recommend these shows is because I love storytelling. Storytelling is one of my passions. It's something I would someday like to make a career out of. And that's why I've posted like short films and skits and all that stuff on my YouTube channel. It's because I've always said wherever you can stitch together pieces and pictures, there's always a story to be told. And growing up, watching a lot of these like TV shows, and as you notice, a lot of them were like superhero, and like action shows. These were just shows that inspired me as a kid, and to this day, still inspire me now. Maybe not all of them. Some of them I did just mention, but the majority of these shows that I've talked about really have had a lasting impact on me, and that's really why I want to talk about these shows with you guys, and why I kind of want to go through and recommend them, some of them, give my thoughts about some of my favorite moments from each of them. And just kind of go through and talk about all that stuff, So anyway, guys, I will leave it on that note, Again, feel free to comment down below any kind of TV shows. Some of your favorites. Anything you want to talk about as far as like what kind of impact they left on you. And if you're a storyteller like me, do they have an impact on you as far as your storytelling? Whatever you want to talk about, throw it in the comment section below. Thank you so much for listening, guys. I really do appreciate it. If you haven't already, please hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, all that good stuff. Anyway, guys, until next time, I hope everybody is staying safe out there in this COVID-19 crazy world of ours. And, yeah, until next time, I'm Justin Crumley, and this is CuJo Productions, signing out.